The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek episode 97.
Captain to bridge.
Spock here.
Make it so. Surrender is not an option.
Attention crew of the Enterprise, this is James Kirk.
We are all explorers, driven to know what's over the horizon, what's beyond our own shores.
We would have helped you get home if you had asked. That's who Starfleet is.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the original series episode, Balance of Terror. Joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Very well, thank you. And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, if you haven't done so yet, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast in Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Spotify, your favorite podcast app, or on our YouTube channel, SQPN, where you should also hit the bell to get notifications of new episodes. So we're talking about this original series episode, one of the best that folks, when the rankings of best episodes are made, this is always at the top of the list, or near the top of the list of best episodes of Star Trek. It's the one that establishes the Romulans as a villain, a force to be reckoned with, and it marks also Mark Lenard's first appearance in Star Trek, who eventually also plays Sarek. And it's basically a World War II sub-hunting story.
Yeah, it's run silent, run deep in space.
Exactly.
It also, even closer, and it does have elements of Run Silent, Run Deep, but it also has elements of an earlier movie called The Enemy Below.
Yes.
Which is very much, you have I think William Holden is playing the American captain, but you have a ship on the surface that's tracking a sub below with a German commander during World War II, and you have this same cat and mouse, two commanders feeling each other out game happening.
Right. In fact, it was very conscious, and I think when I was reading that they very consciously were pulling from that same story. So it's very interesting. Almost to a fault in some cases where, we have the phasers that at times act like depth charges and some of that stuff, and some of the shooting blindly in space as if that would, space is very large. So, but it's okay. I'm willing to give them a little bit because the story is so good.
We should probably mention where the title comes from, because people today may not be familiar with the phrase "balance of terror."
That's a good point.
But it's from the Cold War. This is essentially a precursor phrase to mutually assured destruction. That we've got this balance where we can both hurt each other really badly, so we need to not hurt each other.
Sure.
Right. The balance is maintained because we're terrified of the consequences that would result if we didn't maintain this standoff.
Also, notice this is basically a bottle episode. We have no alien external sets here. It's all just stuff on the Enterprise with pre-existing sets and the Romulan bridge.
Right, which is essentially, I think the Romulan bridge is probably a redress of an Enterprise set.
It probably is. It probably one of the rooms or something.
Yeah. So I mentioned it's the first appearance of the Romulans in Star Trek, so we can credit the screenwriter Paul Schneider for inventing the Romulan, the Star Empire, and he has said that he wanted them to be like the Roman civilization if it ever reached the point of space travel. So in both their ethics and mores and their way of seeing the world in the galaxy, that sort of thing. So it's interesting to see their beginnings. And in fact, the Romulans do change over time. Once we get to TNG, they were a little different than the Romulans of this episode. I really like these Romulans.
I like this version of the Romulans better because, like the Romans, they're trying to be honorable. Basically. Right. And what happens is in Next Gen, they give the Klingons the honor-based culture, and then the Romulans become just duplicitous villains. They have no honor.
Right. Exactly.
They're more the, like the Secret Service type or Secret Police type society, where you're always looking over your shoulder for Tal Shiar. And
whereas originally the Klingons were the untrustworthy ones, but the Romulans had a sense of ethics. They basically flipped the two cultures philosophies.
Yes, the Klingons were originally swarthy pirates, and the Romulans were honorable warriors. So we start the episode with an interesting open. This is an interesting way of starting this episode. Kirk officiating as captain at a wedding, a civil wedding, apparently, although there are religious elements in it, given that this takes place, this is filmed in the 60s, not takes place, but, filmed in 1966 or 5 or somewhere around there.
So the bride, Angela Martine, kneels at the altar.
Yeah.
And if you look at the symbol, the wall hanging behind Kirk, it has a variety of religious symbols, but one of them is a stylized cross. Mm-hmm. And he alludes in the speech to our laws and our many beliefs. So this is like an ecumenical interfaith service.
Yep.
I had thought I read somewhere that originally it was going to be a chaplain who would be performing the wedding, and Roddenberry blew his stack and didn't want there to be a chaplain on the Enterprise. So the role fell to Kirk as the captain, because captains can marry people on sea voyages. But I looked for that in a major history of Star Trek and could not find it. So that may be apocryphal. That may not be true at all.
And it could be just the logical thought of, if the Enterprise has a chapel, or that room was explicitly listed as a chapel, then it must have a officer who is responsible for it. In other words, a chaplain.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting that Angela, the bride, very clearly prays. I mean, she raises her eyes up. I mean, she's kneeling and praying. So I thought that was the interesting inclusion of that, especially given Roddenberry's famed humanist outlook on things and his antipathy toward religion. We do see Scotty acting as the father of the bride. He walks her down the aisle, which is nice.
Well, he's from Scotland, so he's got to be a barbarian and maintain this barbaric custom of giving away the bride like a piece of property.
Right. And the groom is Robert Tomlinson. Apparently, he and Angela are in the same department, the same division. They serve on the same phaser crew.
He's her superior.
I know. It's like, how does that square with the regs?
It doesn't in the modern day military. Apparently, it does in Starfleet just fine.
Wow. Yes. So yeah, I was kind of interesting watching this again after a long time, picking up on that. We have the wedding is interrupted by a red alert. Someone is attacking Earth Outpost 4. We apparently have a bunch of Earth outposts. 1 through, what was it, 7?
8.
And other outposts have already gone dark, and the Enterprise had been tasked with going to find out what was going on. And so the wedding is put on hold.
And we run through the hallways with all these extras because it's season 1, and they have the money for extras in the hallways.
That's right. We're told that we're given the exposition that there's a neutral zone between the Romulan Star Empire, featuring the planets Romulus and Remus. So those twin planets are there from the beginning, and the rest of the galaxy.
Although on the map, on the star map, we see it's Romulus and Romi.
Yeah, very interesting the change in the graphics there.
Also, the fact they say the neutral zone is between these two planets and the rest of the galaxy suggests that the Romulan Star Empire is really small.
Yeah,
it's just these two planets. And then later, the Romulan commander is talking to his centurion saying, "We've seen 100 campaigns together." I'm going, wow, if you've got two planets and you haven't gone out of the neutral zone in 100 years, you've had a lot of insurrections, haven't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, of course, the other side of the neutral zone is Earth outposts, so there's only one planet on the other side. Again, early days of Star Trek, where we haven't really developed the idea of the Federation. So Romulus and Remus. How about we've talked about Balance of Terror? Maybe we should give a little bit of primer on who they were in Earth history.
Okay, so Romulus and Remus were two brothers. They're descendants of Aeneas, who was a survivor of the Trojan War that came to Italy. And Romulus and Remus were raised by a she-wolf, and they then sort of competed in founding a city, which became Rome, and Romulus was the one who won out, and so that's why Rome is named after him. And there's more that happened, but...
It's Rome. It's called Rome, not Reem.
Yeah, exactly. So he's the more famous one, and their backstory is why you'll see Like if you go to the Capitoline Museum in Rome, you'll see the statue of a she-wolf with the two little babies under it suckling.
Yes.
That's Romulus and Remus.
We get some exposition from Spock about the nature of the neutral zone, that neither side is allowed to enter into it. Unlike other neutral territories are often, on Earth, are places where anybody can go. But in this case, it's a neutral zone, which is a barrier which no one can go into. It's a no man's land.
Yeah, I take it to be like the Korean Peninsula demilitarized zone.
That's
right.
That's usually what we call them here on Earth as DMZs, not neutral areas.
Right. In this case, and this would be, again, 1966, the Korean conflict would still be quite present in people's mind, and they would remember this aspect of it. And so we have and he talks about the Romulan War of 100 years previously and the outposts, and Kirk informs everyone, the crew, that Starfleet orders are that the outposts and the Enterprise are both expendable to prevent starting a war. So we've raised the stakes here to what's going on.
Yeah. Spock also mentioned some really implausible stuff, so they fought the war with primitive atomic weapons. Okay, fine.
Yep.
But those primitive atomic weapons means that they never took prisoners. So this would have had to have been an entirely space-fought war.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But he says there wasn't even visual communication between the ships at the time, and that's really implausible.
Yes.
Right.
And they negotiated the treaty by subspace radio, so the two sides have never met.
Right.
And
that bit didn't age well.
Yeah, if they think remotely like us, which they do because they're a Vulcan offshoot, there's no way we would have not met in the course of this war. When have humans ever fought a war with other humans and never saw the other side?
Right.
And arranged a treaty with them.
In fact, in the series Enterprise, they have to jump through some hoops to try to maintain this aspect of the history.
Well, it kind of brings a different light to the missiles that they would launch off the NX-01 Enterprise, because apparently they're all nuclear.
Yes, right. So we get introduced to the navigator, Lieutenant Stiles, who is very anti-Romulan. He names multiple ancestors who died in the Romulan War, and I'm thinking it's sort of like being, holding a grudge from the Civil War in 1966. People
did.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Do
they still do?
People still do. Yeah.
So maybe it is plausible, I guess. But he still maintains that grudge. And then we have some scenes in order to maintain this idea of this sub-hunting feel to the episode. We introduce some changes or differences in the way we've seen things work. One of them is that the phasers are controlled locally, in the phaser control room by a crew, and this is important for the plot. It's locally controlled, manned by crews, and orders are given from the bridge to fire, but they're not fired remotely. They have to be fired locally.
Yeah, so Kirk gives the order to what's his name, who then
Stiles.
relays Stiles, who relays the order down to the phaser control room to the techs who do the actual work.
Right.
And this is the only time we ever see this. Every other time they've automated it, so you just press a button on the bridge and it's done.
Yeah, I want to say they kind of hand waved at that previously, but literally just kind of mentioning that there's a phaser control room, and that's kind of about as far as it went.
And there was a drill, there was a phaser drill previously as well, right? I think in Charlie X, in fact. So we get it to talk to Outpost 4, which has been heavily damaged, and they talk to the commander of the base, and they see it attacked live on screen. It was live streamed while it was attacked and destroyed, and they see the Romulan ship that attacked cloaked. So again, another first, we have a cloaked vessel. And this is necessary.
And Spock says that invisibility is theoretically possible, but the power requirements would be enormous. And he's got it right and wrong in an interesting way, because back then there was a huge debate about could you really make an invisibility screen? Lots of people thought, no, it's not possible. And if you could, you couldn't see out of it. And today we know, no, it is possible to do an invisibility screen using metamaterials. But the thing is, once you've made the metamaterials, there's no power requirement. So
right.
So you build it once, and then you've got an invisibility cloak, and you don't need to decloak to fire.
Well, I think they pretty much considered like the cloaking device back then more like a kind of a shield where it would wrap around the ship and just bend the light around the ship. It's kind of how they explained it.
What it does is it creates limitations on it, so that if you could truly be invisible and fight, then you are nearly invincible. Where this creates the limitation of they have to decloak to fire, which is something that we get throughout the rest of Star Trek to kind of balance out the power of invisibility. So we have this whole idea of the cloak and the power requirements. Styles right here makes a comment that seems a bit odd, where he says there could be Romulan spies on board the Enterprise.
Yeah, and there's a reason why that line is, and Sulu agrees with him, which is even more shocking. There's an explanation, though. There was a deleted scene where they were talking about the Romulan ship and saying it is very similar to us in some ways. It suggested stolen plans for our starship design. And that would lead to, well, then we must have Romulan infiltrators in the Federation, and we might have them on board.
Okay, because it would make more sense if he says this after, which we get next, seeing the Romulans' physical appearance similar to Vulcans.
Yeah.
In fact, they look just like Vulcans. Although I had some notes here, like what if the Romulans had rounded ears as opposed to having pointy ears? It seems a quick leap to just say, oh, they have pointy ears, therefore they must be somehow related to Vulcans. It's entirely based on a very exterior appearance. There isn't a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of reason here at first to say, oh, somehow they're connected to Mr. Spock's race.
They also have pointy eyebrows and similar haircuts.
Yep.
Well, that's true. I guess if we have similar haircuts, we're being invaded by hipsters who all look alike too. So, I guess. But it's interesting that we leap to that. The bottom of the bridge design is interesting. It's intentionally made to look like the cramped bridge of a submarine, where they're all gathered around a central console. This is not a spacious ship by any means. And Styles starts up with his comments, his asides, and sometimes outright accusing Spock of being a spy, which is interesting. Again, this is not far removed from McCarthyism, and it could be a commie in your, right around the corner from you at any moment.
Well, it also sets up so you have the guy that gets saved by the person he mistrusts.
Right.
Right, where he refers to Spock as Vulcan, and this is also not far from the civil rights movement.
Yes. Right. He makes an assumption on Spock based on his race and his outward appearance compared to the bad guys. Which
Kirk says, leave your bigotry in your quarters, no place for it on the bridge.
Right. And I liked that. I thought that has a balance that's like, okay, we're here to be professionals. You're not going to be doing that in public. I don't care what you think in private. I may despise what you think in private, but whatever you think in private is your business. We're here to be professionals.
Yeah,
right.
And that's a more respectful attitude than what you have today, where even people's private thoughts are thought crime, and they need to be ostracized, even if they and berated, and we need to secretly be suspecting what everyone's private thoughts are, because you can't trust even if they're professional in their outward demeanor, there's got to be some secret prejudice they're harboring in their hearts.
Well, and that's where they talk about cancel culture today, is exactly that. Yes. That if you say something or even think something that's wrong, we're going to get you cut off from the rest of the world, basically.
Right. You need to be canceled. You need to be cut off for the first infraction. So we have some of this the Romulan commander on board his bridge of his ship. We never get his name. He's just the commander throughout. But we also have another Romulan.
It really makes it all the more poignant that nobody knows his name when, at the end he sacrifices himself by blowing himself out into the light with the possessed lady, to save everybody from the Midnight Creature. Oh, wait. That's Doctor Who.
That's Doctor Who, yes. So the actor who plays the Romulan Decius is also another actor who plays a Vulcan in a different episode, just like Mark Lenard. That's the actor who plays Stonn in Amok Time, who plays the other suitor to Spock's fiance, shall we say?
And also, they're wearing the same helmets to cover their ears to save on makeup costs.
Yeah, right. That way they didn't have to make prosthetic ears for everyone. And we do get the first hint that there's a secret police political correctness subculture going on in the Romulan Empire, where this guy seems to be operating outside of the chain of command by sending coded messages back to the Praetor, to the government. He's got political connections outside of it, so you have to be wary of the guy who is technically your subordinate but has power over you because of who he knows.
Right.
So there is a bit of that already in this.
Well, they kind of poke at it too, because he sent out the message, the Enterprise was able to basically hack their comms, and that's how they were able to get the view of the bridge.
Right. So he broke radio silence when he wasn't supposed to. That's interesting. I'll have to rewatch that sometime and see, does he come across as the political officer on the ship?
Well, it gets mentioned. The Centurion, warns the commander, hey, be careful with him.
Right.
He's got powerful friends.
It's not so much like a political officer like you saw with the Soviet Union, where Hunt for Red October, where there's that one officer who's the KGB officer, basically. It's more like this is a junior officer who happens to have some very high connections, is kind of how they phrased it.
That was what I thought of, that in Roman society you would have patronage where you had these alliances, and you needed to be careful if you were crossing from one house to another. You may be dealing with someone, he may have high up patrons.
Okay.
Exactly.
I do like this. The commander is a nuanced character. I really like this. He's not just the bad guy. He laments that the Romulan victory over these outposts is not necessarily glorious, because it will mean yet another war. He's the old warrior who is tired of fighting, but has served because it is his duty to do so. But he's tired of war. He doesn't want to go to war again, and so he almost wishes that they would lose, which is, of course, treasonous thinking.
Well, he says, I almost wish we don't get back. So it's like we almost wish we would die on this mission to avoid a war. And so that is revealing of what the purpose of this mission is. I was trying to figure it out, because if you're killing all these bases, why are you sending one ship to do that? Why don't you Pearl Harbor this thing? I mean, that was the Japanese strategy at the beginning of World War II. We're going to decimate the U.S. Navy so that we can then have unfettered expansion in the Pacific and can consolidate our gains before the U.S. can rebuild its Navy. And so I understand a massive sneak attack, but why are they blowing up these bases? The next thing I thought of was, well, this could be tickling, which was something that we and the Soviets would do to each other, where we'd kind of get in each other's faces a little bit,
right,
as kind of just harassing each other, testing each other, keeping each other on our toes, sending a kind of low level, we're not going to war, but we want you to know we're ready kind of signal. But then apparently this is sort of a middle thing where they're deliberately testing, like they've been sent on a mission to see how much damage a single Romulan ship can do to the Federation these days. And if it's enough, we're going to go to war again. We're going to break the treaty.
Right. If these weapons, the cloak and the new powerful plasma weapon, or whatever they call it, are powerful enough to upset the balance of power, the balance of terror, that will allow us to go to war and be assured of victory. And that's what we get here. Spock gives a briefing on this Romulan weapon, and they have he shows them debris from the outpost made of castrodinium, he calls it, the hardest substance known to science. And he crumbles it with his hand.
I love that. I remember that as a child. It's always such a dramatic moment.
Right. Yep. Spock being very dramatic here. And they theorize that it's an enveloping plasma that forces an implosion, which is an interesting bit of science babble that they get going there. They have a book on the table, on the briefing table, an actual bound, leather-covered book called The Table of Comets. And it lists all the known comets. Maybe the one that the NX-01 Enterprise saw is in there.
Oh man! And this comet is named Icarus 4. It's
Yes.
like, come on, dudes! There are 1 trillion comets in our solar system alone.
Exactly. Well, yeah, it's very fun. I wonder where, at this point, did they think of this as this neutral zone being on the edge of our solar system? I just kind of like what was their thinking here? I haven't seen anything that explains how they visualized the way things were, but yeah. I had to laugh quite hard when I saw the book, The Table of Comets, which is a nice pun on Table of Contents, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think we're clearly meant to be somewhere far out in space, but if you look at the map and how fast the Enterprise's dot is moving, it could get to Romulus in like 15 minutes.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
This map is not made to scale. So Spock starts discussing tactics, and McCoy gets upset because, hey, we're already jumping to war here. Well, and McCoy, I'm sorry, Dr. McCoy, they're attacking our bases. We've got to be talking about tactics here. That's the
No
the
pun
long and
intended,
short of
but
it.
that ship has already sailed.
Yeah.
Right.
And Spock is totally right. These guys need to get a nice big Vulcan hello.
Yes, they do. Now Styles wants to go on the attack. He accurately says that if the Romulans ship gets back unscathed, it will encourage them to go to war. That we've established that. And then verbally attacks Spock again for the Romulans' appearance, but Spock turns the tables on him and says, "No, you're right. That we should attack immediately, because if the Romulans are an offshoot of the Vulcans pre-logic, then they will be ruthless and aggressive and dangerous against any sign of weakness. So therefore, I agree. We should immediately attack," which kind of undercuts Styles' suspicions against Spock.
But by the way, there's a moment early on where just after the first line about there could be spies on board, and then we see the Romulan commander, and Styles immediately accuses Spock. You watch Leonard Nimoy's reaction, and he's conveying Spock is nervous.
Right.
And waits to see what Kirk's reaction to that is going to be. And it's not until Kirk tells Styles to keep his bigotry in his quarters that Leonard Nimoy as Spock relaxes.
Mhm.
But
Right.
so I like that Spock is genuinely nervous here at first.
He's concerned. Yeah. So Kirk comes up with a plan to attack the Romulan when it flies through a comet's tail, which would reveal its position. So they are somehow tracking its movement, but of course they can't. But for some reason they can't see it well enough with the sensors.
Yeah, like sensor shadow or something like that. They see something, but they're not sure what it is.
And
Right.
they're using that to their advantage by setting a parallel course to the Romulans to make the Romulans think that they're just a sensor echo.
Right. But of course the Romulans figured that out, and we find out they're intentionally flying into the comet in order to obscure the Enterprise's sensors and then have a sneak attack when the Enterprise is blinded in the comet tail. But the Romulan ship gets damaged when the Enterprise fires blind, and the old Centurion, who's the old comrade of the commander, he ends up dying heroically, saving the commander from falling styrofoam.
Yeah.
And,
Exactly.
these giant parts of the ship that fall at random, but the ship seems to be
Well, along
structurally
with
okay.
the random dust that every time the ship gets hit just kind of filters down from the ceiling. It must
I know,
be full
they need some maids or something to really kind of do some vacuuming.
Yeah. Meanwhile, back over on the Enterprise, the Enterprise using its depth charge phaser mode has burned out a bunch of fuses.
Yeah, that apparently are all under Spock's console. That's where they keep
exactly.
the phaser circuits. That's handy. So the Enterprise instead backs up when the Romulan ship shoots the plasma weapon at them, and the Enterprise starts reversing direction, backing up,
Boldly backing away as fast as possible.
Yes, and which led me to think: does this weapon have a guidance system? Could you just not like step to the side and have it go past you? Yeah,
Who
apparently,
knows?
apparently it has a guidance system. And then, as the Romulan ship prepares to enter the neutral zone, the Enterprise attacks again at extreme range. They're trying to prevent them from getting through because of this whole thing. If they get back unscathed, that'll be an invitation of war. And this leads Kirk to decide to violate orders and enter the neutral zone.
Right.
Despite his earlier, we're expendable, at all costs, stop the war.
Well, avoid war is the overarching priority. That's why the Enterprise is expendable. And now they've realized that to avoid war, we've got to stop this ship from getting back.
Right.
At least they've reasoned their way to that position. They haven't really proved it. Interestingly, earlier on, Spock has said that the Romulan ship only has impulse power. So they're limited to light speed, which means massive tactical disadvantage in any war with the Federation. Yeah. And then when Kirk says full astern, emergency warp, so it's like you could totally outrun. I mean, that plasma, being plasma, it has mass, so it's also light speed limited. You should totally get away from that thing lickety split. It shouldn't be a problem. But eventually it dissipates due to range. Yeah. And that's how they manage to avoid it. They just they get an impact, but it's not fatal. Also, as they're waiting for the impact, Janice Rand and Kirk hug each other.
I noticed that, yeah.
Subtle, but they do hug each other.
She needs some consolation from the big strong captain there.
Yeah.
Very much of its time. The Romulan commander does the old Submariner trick where he expels some debris and bodies to trick the Enterprise into thinking that they're dead. But Kirk's not buying it. Spock says there's not enough debris to really make up for, the mass of the Romulan ship. And so the Enterprise and Bird of Prey go silent and wait for the other to make a move for over 9 hours.
So silent running for 10 hours for both ships. Everybody is whispering, despite the fact there's a hard vacuum between the two ships. And Kirk even tells Spock to work quietly despite space.
Right.
Well, apparently their sensors are so sensitive they can pick up the slightest sound, hundreds of kilometers between the ships or however far they are apart.
At best. Yeah, you could have a rock concert on board the Enterprise and it wouldn't matter, but apparently. So we have this moment where it's that classic moment in the sub-hunting story where the captain gets maudlin, and he gets so Kirk gets maudlin about having to be in command and make the tough decisions, and McCoy talks about how in all the universe there's only one of each of us, and Kirk shouldn't destroy the one named Kirk. And I'm like, this is a very odd speech.
I know. Yeah. I have in my notes, McCoy delivers a bunch of bad math, followed by there's only one of each of us, followed by don't destroy the one named Kirk. It's like, don't kill yourself is, probably something he wasn't planning on doing anyway. I mean.
Right. Yeah, it was a bit of an odd bit of,
Gene Roddenberry did rewrite this script without credit, so that may be why.
Yes.
That might have been another one of those where they had to stretch the plot just a little bit longer to fit the time.
Right. It was his bad math was the mathematical probability of 3 million Earth-type planets in the galaxy. So
and 3 million galaxies, and it's like, way more than that, dude.
Well, he did say 3 million galaxies. It was 2 million there.
Still.
Right. So, meanwhile, on the bridge, Spock, blindly reaching up from underneath the console where he's been working on the phasers, accidentally activates a sensor, which, of course, is this way to create suspicion in Styles that he did it on purpose because it alerts the Romulans that they're still out there. The Romulan is out of fuel for his plasma weapon, so he drops a nuke in with some more debris this time, which the nuke damages the Enterprise, and they're unable to shoot. They're unable to fire. So Kirk sends Styles to phaser control to help Tomlinson, the groom from the wedding at the beginning of the episode, remember, who was alone there after the attack. And then Uhura is sent to man navigation, which is kind of nice. We get this nice moment of Uhura and Sulu at the console. They kind of there's a pause here to kind of let the audience see the black woman, the Asian man, running things
the ship.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't even think of it in those terms. I just noticed that Sulu looks over at her and they have like a meaningful glance or something.
Yeah, I have a feeling that there was a little bit of that there, which is fine.
Yeah, not the lens I see the world through.
Right.
One thing that was interesting, this is more the lens I see the world through. She uses the communication system from the nav console. Right. And apparently someone noticed that she shuts down the communication station when she leaves it. So she's apparently transferring the functions of that over to the nav station.
Yes. Yeah, that was a nice bit of direction there, making sure that we get that in there. Kirk wants to play dead and wants to lure them in, so the Enterprise is kind of hanging sideways in space to make it look like it's dead. And Decius, the Romulan subordinate, wants to attack the Enterprise, but the commander wants to leave. But Decius mentions their duty, and that stiffens the commander's resolve, maybe to just to do what needs to be done.
And
Meanwhile,
of course, Frederick has to go with his duty because he is the slave of duty. Oh wait, that's Pirates of Penzance.
Oh, okay. So, meanwhile, in phaser control, Spock shows up to see how things are going, and Styles verbally attacks Spock, and then so Spock leaves. But then there's a phaser coolant leak, which is an important thing. The coolant leaks on when there's a coolant leak.
Is that what that is? I just have a gas leak, or it could be smoke. I don't know what that was.
There was a sign on the wall that said phaser coolant, so I kind of made the connection. Spock runs back in when the Kirk is calling for them to fire, and nobody's shooting, and so Spock hears, and he runs back in and sees Styles and Tomlinson on the floor, and he manages to fire the weapons. And then we have this scene of Kirk and the commander on screen. The commander's, his ship is doomed. He's been defeated, but he refuses to be rescued.
Yeah, and Kirk is like, okay, let's beam your survivors over here to the Enterprise, and then let's mutually complement each other. But it's like, no, that's not what my duty allows.
Right.
Exactly.
The commander says that in a different reality, he and Kirk could have been friends.
I kind of wonder about this line because this is like such a cliche, but I don't know if in a different reality, I could have called you friend. It's like, dude, you don't really know him very well. He could just be a good tactician and a jerk.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But this is such a cliche line. I mean, we're totally Gilgamesh and Enkidu at a rook at this moment.
Yes.
But was this a cliche at the time?
Mm-hmm.
Where you have the two commanders that, if only things had been different, we could have been friends, even though we don't actually know each other at all. Was that already a cliche, or is this kind of the start of that cliche in science fiction?
I think it's not even just science fiction. I think in a lot of war literature, about opposing officers, there was often this idea that, like in the Civil War, they actually, in many of the opposing generals, were actually friends.
They'd gone to West Point together.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And so there's this idea of, we are honorable men of honor, men of war, men of our profession, and we respect each other. We could attend parties together and have great conversations and talk about tactics. But when it's time for us to do battle, then we do battle. But we would be friends otherwise. And I think that was, I don't know if it was a cliche so much at that point, although it's kind of a cliche now. But at the time, it was just sort of understood that a great officer would be a great
in
warrior.
In a historical piece, I understand it because that has happened. But here you have these two people who have never met before.
Mm-hmm.
And they're both so noble that even though they've never had a conversation before this moment,
right?
The Romulan is convinced of Kirk's mutual nobility and that they're tragically at odds with each other.
Right.
Well,
right.
And it is kind of the end of the little, kind of asides that the Romulan commander would say about how noble Kirk is and how, strategic he is and how brilliant he is. Although they, again, had never talked face to face, just off of how Kirk handled the situation.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like he, at one point he says, "This one's telepathic. He can read my mind." So,
he's a sorcerer. That one.
Yes. That was the line. So the Romulan commander instead blows up his own ship because he can't let out of duty he cannot let the Starfleet get a hold of their technology.
Just one more duty to perform. Boom.
Yes. And then we get at the end Yeoman Rand shows up with news that Starfleet Command finally got back to Kirk to say, "We support whatever decision you make." Well, that's good. Thanks for showing up and let me know that I'm okay doing what I've done.
And by the way, the groom of the wedding to be is now dead.
The only fatality in this whole escapade is Tomlinson, and we end with Angela, his fiancée, in the chapel praying when Kirk goes to her, and he tries to reassure her that there has to be a reason for what happened to Tomlinson, even if it doesn't make sense. And that's kind of where we end. She says, "I'm all right." That's just sort of like, I'll be okay.
And that Time Lord for "I'm really not all right."
Right.
Exactly.
Yes, exactly. But it's an interesting way to bracket this episode with the the wedding and the sacrifice that's made, and it's sort of a bit of a prayer at the end too. This idea of there must be a reason for the way things happen. There, that we have a higher power, given that Angela was praying at the time that he told her that. So it's an interesting way to bracket it. Again, 1966, the people's sense of faith was much more present in their daily life than we often have now, especially in our entertainment. Anything else you want to say about this episode?
Nothing here.
So I really like the classic design of the Romulan warbird, and I wish that they would use that design more.
Yes.
Yes. I think it's a really cool design, and it always has been, and it's been underused. They also note at one point that this is the Praetor's finest flagship that has been beaten, and it's a little interesting that you would send your finest flagship to do a mission like this.
Although you equip it with the most advanced weaponry we have.
Yeah, and the worst and clearly inferior transportation system. They should be able to tell from the other side of the neutral zone that we're moving much faster than light on the other side.
Right.
Also, Styles, and I think we touched on this, but Styles is alive because Spock saves him.
I forgot to mention.
So the Vulcan bigot, or the anti-Vulcan bigot, is saved by the Vulcan, and we have our little, not exactly subliminal, but low-level message there.
Right.
And that's fine. As long as it's low level, as long as you don't have a speech about you've got to be the best of humanity, and then we cut to a Klan rally or something.
Right. Where have we seen that one a few months ago? So, we have this line from Styles. "I'm alive, sir, but I wouldn't be. Mr. Spock pulled me out of the phaser room. He saved my life. He risked his life after and then he gets cut off by Spock saying, 'I saved a trained navigator so he could return to duty. I'm capable of no other feelings in such matters.'" Oh, okay, you jerk. I guess I'm just utilitarian useful to you. I don't have value in and of myself.
That's just Spock being Spock.
I know.
Exactly.
I just wanted a little funny there. But, all right, so, and again, as I said at the top, this is, despite whatever quibbles, this is one of the best episodes of Star Trek, the original series, in all of Star Trek. And this really highlights, why Kirk is such a great captain. It highlights what made this so good, Star Trek so good. This first season, as we go through it, I keep remembering how many great episodes are in this first season, and this is certainly one of the best. So, very good. We do have a bit of feedback from our last episode, a while ago, from episode 82, where we're recording these a bit ahead of, so we're catching up on our feedback. On our Deep Space Nine discussion in episode 82, called Captive Pursuit, that, if you recall, that was the one where the hunters from the Gamma Quadrant were hunting Tosk. Just Tosk. Right. So Kelly Brown writes on Facebook, "I like this episode, and I agree with Jimmy and Dom that Tosk was one of the most interesting characters of the first season. I wonder, though, Cisco is going to let the hunters take him because of the Prime Directive and all, but the Bajorans, who own the station, don't have the same rules. They don't have a Prime Directive. I wonder how it would have shaken out if the Bajorans had disagreed with Cisco.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
I'm almost kind of surprised they didn't do that. Although I think there were a couple of times eventually in the series where they start doing that, where they start having the little bit of friction between Starfleet and Bajor.
Especially when Kai Wynn shows up. Yeah. Also, since O'Brien helped Tosk escape, wouldn't that have interfered in their game? I can see the hunters not being as willing to allow the Alpha Quadrant to be out of bounds in the game since someone from there interfered.
Tosk is apparently not allowed to actively solicit help, and that does interfere with the game. But once he's loose again, I think the hunters are still going to try to catch him.
Right. I think they were just happy to have the hunt back on and to have Tosk not be stripped of his dignity and glory, etc. So, yeah, I think that was the case there. All right. Well, thank you for that feedback, Kelly. We really appreciate it. Before we finish up, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek, including Peter H., Joshua R., Don C., Andrew W., and Chris M. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. We'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits this show for us every week. So that's it from us. What do you think of the original series episode Balance of Terror? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek or our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia or via email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the movie Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home.
Ooh, The Search for Whales.
Yep, The Search for Whales. There'll be whales here, Captain. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me in sharing The Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Tom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, I wish I were on a long sea voyage somewhere. Not too much deck tennis, no frantic dancing, and no responsibility. What's deck tennis? Apparently that was a thing back in the 60s.